Good morning, good morning, and welcome to this March 21st, Tuesday, March the 21st session of the OBX Wave Report, where we are capturing some beautiful images of the skies across the Outer Banks over the past day. This is a purple dusk sky from the beach yesterday over in Kill Devil Hills, just this gorgeous, popping purple color over the sky here. And the Outer Banks skies are nothing if not surreal. It is just a blessing to live out here on the edge beneath an ever-changing sky that projects your senses out into the edge of the universe. You really do feel like you're a part of everything here, and the beauty of it, it's almost impossible that it does not touch you in some way. Um, and here we also have an image of, oops, excuse me, I was looking at the weather report, an image of the golden dawn with waves breaking gently on the beach in the early morning hours. And this does give you an idea what the waves are like here in the Nag's Head, Kill Devil Hills, Kitty Hawk region. Rather small, in the range of about 1 foot. So much, much calmer conditions here on the Outer Banks. Now, we've gone from purple dusk to this gorgeous dawn, and that creates a nice little metaphor for the weather conditions that we are likely to experience over the coming days in juxtaposition to the weather conditions that we've experienced over the past week. So we are right now emerging from a cold snap, a mid-March cold snap, end of winter cold snap. And as we get into spring, spring is being welcomed in by a heat wave that is about to move up through the US Southeast and blanket not just the Outer Banks, but a large number of states in the US Southeast. It's going to move in under this big bell of hot, moist air moving up from the Gulf of Mexico, which is much warmer than normal. And there's going to be a battleground between the hot and the cold out over parts of the central US. We're going to talk a little bit more about that later, but I do want to talk about the heat wave. And I just did a little search on the Googles for news about heat waves, and I found some interesting things. So we're going to have a little bit of a segue about apparently scientists have found intense heat waves at the bottom of the ocean, which is new science. And that's interesting, something in the climate and weather realm, which is very interesting. And I have also recently heard a lot about this Australian heat wave, which created an extreme temperature change in the waters near Australia, um, in the river near an Australian town, which generated a mass fish kill. And this is kind of the freaky thing you can get when you heat the globe up. You start to push the temperatures outside of the range that living things are used to, and then you get these shocks to the system, which is one of the reasons why we talk every day about the need to transition to clean energy and stop burning that heat trapping fossil fuel. But I did want to scroll down because I did find the weather reporters in our area starting to pick up on a heat wave that is expected to blanket the Carolinas after sub-freezing temps this weekend. So, and this is from the Charlotte Observer. So heat waves in the news and a heat wave likely now over Thursday, Friday, and Saturday and Sunday. We are likely to receive temperatures here in the Outer Banks in the range of 60s and 70s, possibly hotter. Every time I see these forecasts of warmer temperatures, they tend to be exceeded, and we'll see. We'll see if that happens. But right now, temperatures in the 60s and 70s from Thursday through I'm sorry, yeah, from Wednesday through Sunday. So Wednesday through Sunday, the block where the heat is coming, and under that heat, we are likely to see smaller waves continuing, likely in the range of 1 to 3 or 1 to 4 feet most days. We'll have some trouble finding beaches with good waves to ride with the small waves, but it does look like we will still be able to find beaches with the small waves that are still rideable. So we'll talk about the waves in a little bit. I did want to talk about the conditions that are leading up to the heat wave. And right now we've got this big high pressure system that is sinking in over the US East. The high is pulling up the warm, moist air from the Gulf, which is helping to fuel the warm front that's expected to drape from Texas all the way up to the US Northeast. And that energy is also coming in for storminess in that region from the West Coast, with another storm moving into California and a swirl of storminess over the Rockies. I did want to point out also up here in the bomb zone of the North Atlantic, we've got another big bombish storm just south and east of Greenland, south of Iceland. So we probably got some big waves on the way for parts of the excuse me, parts of the UK and Ireland as well. Getting to the geocolor composite image, we just look at the gorgeous white cloud tops provided by our NOAA satellites, and we can see that massive clouds developing in the central US, stretching from Texas through Oklahoma, Nebraska, parts of Missouri, Iowa, Arkansas, and Louisiana. That's with that bulge coming up through that warm front, and you can almost see the warm air just riding in here in this block of clouds, and then the colder air mass up to the north kind of creating this bow as the warm air thrusts up through the central US, and you've had that cold air that was in place and it just gave way, and so you have this big bell almost in the clouds, which is providing like the dividing line between hot and cold that you're starting to see here in this warm front setup, and then you've got that warm air coming in underneath. So very representative of the dynamics at play. And then out here in California, you got that moisture pulse, and here in the Outer Banks, beautiful skies. We've got a little bit of cloudiness, but not too much in the way of cloudiness. Got hit with some unexpected clouds yesterday, but those have mostly cleared off as the front offshore, which belled up toward the Outer Banks, has now mostly shifted offshore. And in the enhanced cloud tops, we can see this pulse of moisture moving northward and firing off some storms in the central US. The colder air mass to the north also interacting with the warm air coming up from the Gulf. And then this big mass of precipitation and moisture moving over California and leaping over the Rockies right into that warm air mass. And as that happens, we'll expect some more potential for severe weather, particularly as we get into Thursday and Friday for the central US. You can see California again lighting up like a Christmas tree as another powerful storm system moves in. Not as bad as it was last week, but still major mountain snows, still heavy rain, still flood watches up. And then we've got lots of winter weather advisories up for the higher elevations of the Rockies. And then for the northern section of the U.S., north central, we've got some wintry weather as well. Here in the Outer Banks, clear and very little in the way of small craft advisories, gale warnings, not as wild and willy as it has been, but we do have some small craft advisories out from Oregon Inlet down in through Hatteras Island and down toward Ocracoke, but really not too much in the way of oceanic advisories or heavy surf just offshore. So calming down ahead of the big warm up. So let's get into the wave analysis for today. And looking at Jeanette's Pier right now, we've got waves in the range of 1 foot. So very small right now at Jeanette's Pier with a primary swell coming in out of the northeast at 4 seconds. That swell is in the range of 1.6 feet. So we might have some waves. I mean, it says 1 foot, but we might have waves in the 1.3, 1.4 foot range. Sometimes those waves are rideable at Jeanette's Pier, so we could still have some rideable waves. We'll get down to the beach for an observation for you guys today. Secondary swell coming in at 13 seconds less than 1 foot, about a little bit more than a half a foot. So just probably about the 0.7 foot range for the secondary swell coming in out of the east northeast. Winds 13 miles per hour, the north northeast, that is an onshore flow. Air temperature is 48 degrees. Ocean water temperatures a tick up at 49 degrees Fahrenheit. And we've got already just across the Outer Banks a overall warm up in ocean water temperatures. So this might be the time where we are starting to see the warm up in the ocean as we start to get into spring. I know it's early. Yesterday was the first day of spring. Today is the second day of spring, but we are already starting to see some of that spring influence here in the Outer Banks. Of course, we're likely to see some variability. Of course, the weather here shifts back and forth pretty hard, and we might get another hard swing as we get into next week. But for the next few days, for the next 4 or 5 days, it's gonna be very spring-like, possibly even summer-like conditions. Um, Weather forecast today, not summer-like yet. Mostly sunny, warming from yesterday, high of 54. This at Jeanette's Pier. And before we go south, I do want to pull another observation, just a brief observation for you guys from Bathhouse up here at the edge of Nag's Head and getting into like the border between Nag's Head and Kill Devil Hills. At Bathhouse right now, waves are in the range of 0 to 1 feet. So also very, very small conditions out there at Bathhouse. Similar to those waves you saw in the observation, the dawn patrol observation provided by a friend down at the beach. And then moving on south to Rodanth, we have, I don't know why it keeps doing that. Okay, here we go. Moving on down south to Rodanth, using our Google Maps for informational purposes, we find waves are in the range of 1 to 2 foot at Rodanth. So better surf conditions at Rodanth with a primary swell coming in out of the northeast at 4 seconds. That is a 2 foot swell. Secondary swell coming in almost due east at 13 seconds, less than 1 foot, about 0.8 foot on the secondary swell. Winds out of the north northeast at 19 miles per hour. That's still an onshore flow. Air temperature is warmer, just a tick warmer down there at Rodanth with 51 degree Fahrenheit air temperatures. And ocean water temperatures 3 to 4 degrees warmer than yesterday at about 54 degrees Fahrenheit. So much, well, considerably warmer. I wouldn't say this is in any way warm, but warmer down there at Rodanth, which is optimistic for those of us who are looking forward to warmer ocean water temperatures. And weather conditions right now are some clouds, but mostly sunny. And the expected high today also at 54 degrees. Now, I did also want to backtrack here up to S-turns and in the P Island National Wildlife Refuge, S-turns up about here. And right now, S-turns is also seeing 1 to 2 foot waves. We're going to go ahead and head on down south past Avon. Avon also at 1 to 2 foot waves to Buxton. And Buxton is just, once again, the big wave spot here at the Outer Banks. Buxton showing waves in the range of 2 to 3 feet. Certainly not big waves by any stretch of the imagination, but bigger. And right now, the primary swell at Buxton coming in at 5 seconds at 3.5 feet. This out of the northeast, maybe a little bit more north-northeast, and then an east-northeast swell, just actually a little bit just north of due east at 13 seconds. Again, less than 1 foot there with that secondary swell. And then winds out of the north-northeast, which is an onshore flow at 17 miles per hour. That's like a fresh onshore flow, nothing too strong. Air temperatures 50 degrees Fahrenheit, so also warming up down there at Buxton, and ocean water temperatures 2 degrees warmer than yesterday. We're back up into the 60s at 61 degrees Fahrenheit. Weather prediction for Buxton: clouds and sun with an expected high today of 55 degrees. And then for our last location, we're going to go to Billy Mitchell Airport, the father of naval aviation. Billy Mitchell, major historic location down there at the beach. And right now, Billy Mitchell is seeing 2 foot waves as well. So not too much smaller down there at Billy Mitchell, but a little bit smaller. Okay, so let's get into some of our broader weather and climate analysis. Here in the southeast, we are still seeing cooler than normal conditions, but the big change is on the way. We can already see that flow starting to move. On the backside of that high pressure system, we can already see that warm air thrusting northward. And so the setup for the southeast heat wave is falling into place, and it looks like this is going to happen, folks. It's not far out in the models. It's knocking on the door. It's starting tomorrow. Larger analysis for the globe. The Arctic is much warmer than normal right now, with a big impulse of heat coming in through the Bering Sea region with much warmer than normal conditions on the North American and East Siberian side of the Arctic, with cooler than normal conditions belling up between Greenland, Scandinavia, and parts of Siberia, but much of the Arctic now just much warmer than normal, particularly in the high Arctic, with some warm air invading. And then for Europe, much of Europe much warmer than normal. Northwest Africa much warmer than normal. Southeast Asia, most of it much warmer than normal, but with the exception being India, Australia much warmer than normal. And then Antarctica being basically the only major region that's a little bit cooler than normal if you break the globe up into Arctic, Antarctic, tropics. The Antarctic region is the only region showing slightly cooler than normal conditions, with the whole globe at about 0.4 degrees Celsius above the already warmer than normal 1981 to 2010 average. So that's the larger climate picture for the globe. For the US Southeast, we are looking toward a heat wave. Getting an idea where the storminess is expected to fire up, our 7-day precipitation outlook does show that the US West Coast still under the gun for storms coming in. The atmospheric river seems to have relaxed a little bit, but we're still getting crazy precipitation here in California. It's been a record-shattering year for precipitation for California. They took a major hard swing from drought to flood and massive snowfall. That trend is continuing, even though for this week it's not expected to be quite as intense as last week. But the big deal is now looking at the Mississippi and Ohio River valleys over the next 7 days for potential for heavy rain and possible severe weather as that warm air mass clashes with the cold, as the Gulf that is much warmer than normal, the Gulf of Mexico that is much warmer than normal, pushes that air northward into that cold air mass, and you got that spring battle between heat and cold that's enhanced by warmer than normal conditions in the Gulf of Mexico. So we're going to have to keep a weather eye towards severe weather for this region, and we are. Over the next couple of days, nothing too crazy as far as severe thunderstorm risk. No major severe thunderstorm risk today. Marginal risk tomorrow for the region that is receiving that big plug of moisture. And then On day 3, we start to get actually a pretty widespread region of enhanced or slight, well, let's see, we got slight risk, marginal risk, and I guess light green. I can't remember. Let's look at this. I am going to look at the table. Thunderstorms. So chance of thunderstorms running from Texas all the way up to the Great Lakes region on day 3, which is, let's see, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And then we've got marginal and slight risk of severe thunderstorms into Texas and Oklahoma on Thursday as well. So we'll have to keep an eye on that, see if we get any powerful storms. Nothing too crazy, but when you get those chances for severe thunderstorms, you can get some pretty crazy weather. And it's also worth noting that on Friday, we've got some enhanced risk of thunderstorms or increased risk of thunderstorms, severe thunderstorms running up from Louisiana all the way through Arkansas, Alabama, parts of Tennessee and Kentucky. All right, so now let's look at the global forecast system model for the next few days for the lower 48. And right now we've got that high pressure system sinking in that over the US Southeast, starting to pull up the warm air from the Gulf of Mexico and starting to begin the setup for our heat wave. I'm going to go ahead and advance this model. And so you can see the high pressure system actually just sinking down here off the Outer Banks. It seems to like the Outer Banks in this model. And you can see the circulation around the high pulling up that warm air over the southeast US, creating that battle zone between hot and cold here, running from Texas all the way through the Great Lakes and then the northern central tier of the United States, with rain south and snows north. And you can also see the energy coming in from the west coast in the form of storms that's helping to fuel the energy in that battleground. So as we get on into Thursday, we do have some scattered showers across the US Southeast, with the high pressure system now offshore, providing a strong southeasterly flow for most of the US East, and warmer than normal conditions for that region. And then you've got the weather that's developing along the warm front into Thursday, but it doesn't really start to pop until we get into Friday, with likely heavy precipitation in the east central US running from Missouri through Ohio. And then as we get into late Friday and Saturday, again, some heavy precipitation, possible severe weather running from Louisiana on in through Kentucky. And this storm moves up to the north and east. Looks like it gets into Ohio in the day on Saturday, with a front sweeping through the Appalachians later in the day on Saturday. Nothing too crazy for the Appalachians. Looks like the Appalachians are going to get some moderate, possibly heavy rain, but nothing too bad for them. The main impulse is up here toward the north, running in through the Great Lakes, parts of southern Canada, looking like a pretty severe snowstorm. And then the energy transfers offshore. We get a double barrel low here up in the northeast, with looks like a pretty significant snowstorm for parts of the northeast. And then the energy transfers offshore off of Maine as we get into Sunday, and then heads on out to sea. Nothing major as far as oceanic storms, so we might get a swell, an increased swell as we get on into Sunday, but nothing too major here for the Outer Banks as far as waves go. And then as we get into Monday, it looks like another stormy impulse riding in through the Gulf region and US Southeast, and then heading on up to the US Northeast. All right. I did want to do a thing. I forgot to advance this model. I do want to show you how the temperature anomalies are supposed to pop for the US Southeast over the coming days. We're going to get into the final wave analysis, so just bear with me as I advance this model. This is, let's see. So by tomorrow, we've got warmer than normal conditions in place from looks like New Mexico all the way up to the US Northeast. And then as we get into Thursday, the heat in the Southeast is very well in place, with much warmer than normal temperatures expected for regions of Oklahoma, Arkansas, Missouri. So yeah, big warm up there, but also just broader warm up for the US East and Southeast. And then the band of much warmer than normal conditions sinks eastward into Thursday and Friday, and does start to get it here over the eastern US and Virginia and North Carolina region, and here in the Outer Banks as we get into Friday and Saturday. Much warmer than normal conditions dominating, and then into Sunday as well. And let's see how far out it goes. Yeah, it does look like even as we remain into Monday, we're in that pattern now where temperatures are expected to be above normal. All right. You know what I haven't been doing recently is showing you the Climate Prediction Center's predictions for 8 to 14 days. I'm gonna have to get back to that. We've got a lot of analysis. I don't want to get too far into the weeds like I did yesterday. I think I did. All right, so big warm up on tap. Now let's talk waves. Right now, waves in the near offshore environment are in the range of 2 to 4 feet. These swells lining up to produce 1 to 3 foot waves on the coast. In some locations, we've got really small waves, 0 to 1 foot waves. So not great surf for some locations, but still likely rideable waves for places like Rodanth, Avon, Stearns, and Buxton. Possibly rideable down there at Jeanette's Pier, but it's going to be small. We'll get down there for an observation for you guys, and I'll let you know whether or not there are surfers on the beaches. And we're going to get on the beaches later in the week as it starts to warm up. So for tomorrow, waves in the near offshore environment also in the range of 2 to 4 feet, likely translating to 1 to 3, maybe 1 to 4 foot waves on Wednesday. And then Thursday, the swell maintains here. It's coming out of the east. It's not very large. It's in the 2 to 3 foot range now as we get into Thursday. So smaller waves on Thursday, although we still might have some locations where the waves are rideable and pretty good. And then into Friday, we get some more southerly winds. So the wind does pick up from the south as we get into Friday. Southwest, this is actually pretty strong wind here. Looks like for the south beaches in the range of sustained winds in the range of the mid 20 mile an hour, maybe upper 20 mile an hour range. For the north beaches, calmer, but still a relatively stiff southwest flow. And so as we get down to the ocean, what that does is that turns the swell around to the west and to the southwest. And then the swell for the east-facing beaches just offshore is going to be in the range of 3 to 6 feet. So a larger swell. Where you get the wraparound swell, the waves will be pretty decent. But with the small swell already coming in from the east and then the winds turning out around to the southwest, might get some locations where the swell is just simply blown out. So you might have to go on a hunt for waves on Friday. And I'm not sure if we can get into Saturday. Yes, we can. So the south winds do perpetuate that swell coming in from the south as we get into Saturday. The swell in the range of 3 to 5 feet on Saturday. But with that south orientation, again, you might need to go on a hunt for waves for the right lineup at the beach. I suspect that Buxton is going to be a good day for these days. We might have 3 to 4 foot waves, for example, at Buxton, but places northward, it might be harder to find a good swell. We'll just have to see. I've been pleasantly surprised when we've had south swells in the Outer Banks. It's not like Virginia Beach, where when you get a south swell like this, it's kind of the kiss of death for waves. Here in the Outer Banks, it's not a kiss of death so much because you get the nice wraparound. So it can be good conditions. We'll just have to pay attention to the wave monitors. But my general comment for Saturday is that, south is probably bigger. All right. So thank you for joining me for this session of the OBX Wave Report, where we have discussed all things waves, weather, climate, and I don't think we've talked much. Yeah, beach lifestyle, walking on the beach and getting beautiful observations is a part of the beach lifestyle. Um, so we've done all the things. And the last thing I'm going to do is just ask you guys to please Do everything you can to help speed the transition to clean energy. Clean energy being the primary means by which we defend our coastlines from the impacts of climate change, which are driven by fossil fuel burning. We can certainly replenish beaches and raise highways and reinforce our infrastructure, and those are good things to do. But the only way we're going to be able to make safe our coastlines from the impacts of sea level rise and the increasingly powerful storms is to halt the burning of fossil fuels to get to net zero and then probably net negative carbon emissions. Um, and then we'll be able to work toward stable coastlines, well-defended coral reefs, and well-defended beach breaks that just aren't getting swept out and just constantly shifted by crazy and increasingly severe impacts. And we'll also be able to prevent really nasty hot oceans. So the center of gravity right now is wind, water, solar, electric vehicles, and then connecting all of them. And I don't know. I do want to say something about progress. So in the past, it has been a view, and I think this is a flawed view, that progress was driven simply by fossil fuel burning. And that if you don't have fossil fuel burning, you can't have progress. Progress meaning um, advancement to better the lives of us as individuals, to make our lives better, and to defend ourselves as individuals, against the terrible forces of nature, and then to move more powerfully and with more agency through nature. We don't have to make a Faustian bargain with the devil basically represented here by fossil fuels to have progress. We can instead make a partnership with clean energy and use clean energy as the base of our progress. Clean energy is more fungible than fossil fuels. You can do more with electricity than you can do with nasty chemicals. And so we should, and we can, and we should be optimistic about that and see the wonderful future that that represents. So my headphones are cutting off and telling me that it's time to end the wave report. So that is my happy thought for today, which I hope that you embrace. So thank you for joining me. I will be back with you shortly. We'll get down to the beaches, we'll do some observations, and we're going to get back in the water soon. So